suppose based on discussions with friends, peer group, people who've approached me for work, and the general sort of atmosphere around the post-COVID labour market, what became increasingly apparent was that men face particular challenges in trying to reinvent themselves, trying to break back into the job market, and running into all the tech-based hurdles very often. This lack of humanity comes up quite a lot during conversations that seem to screen them out from any way of re-establishing a foothold or a handhold
Yeah.
on some sort of purpose, future, and career. And I've been doing also simultaneously some work with former professional athletes, and what came out during those conversations quite often is the acute impact it can have on the male psyche, and this is to do with sense of self, a sort of societal conditioning that sees you as the breadwinner, having a sort of dominant role in how your family is provided for, and so on. And bringing all those strands together, it was obvious that there was such a commonality, some sort of discussion, some sort of forum might very well be useful to people involved in the Brave Starts program to see if there's a way to move forward. I mean, they fall into three, possibly four, fairly obvious categories. The first being frustration, for all the reasons I described in the introduction. The second being very much a sense of isolation. And the third one being really a sense that they're forgotten. Phrases come up all the time, like, I just don't feel I'm getting there. Humanity has gone, decency has gone. There is no place for me. Nobody can fit me into the work pyramid. And a sort of counterpoise to that really is a sense of defiance. I will not go backwards. There's no sense of falling for idealized newspaper features that suggest you can move seamlessly from very high paid, prestigious jobs to sort of growing organic vegetables for nothing. And I've never been happier. But allied to that, there is a sense really that flexibility is required, that people are savvy enough to know that if they're very corporate, they might be able to move to SMEs, but their very specialist skills can be generalized to effect. Um, but I think that two worrying words that came up often during the conversations were shame and despair, which connects directly to what I was discussing earlier about the male psyche. And those things are not good. And part of that was undoubtedly a highly developed sense of frustration that all this experience, all this skill built up over many, many years of labor was simply being thrown away. And often in the face of a very paradoxically narrow definition of diversity, which breaks things down into interest groups, in which men, middle-aged men, seem to have no part. What was important, though, is nobody wanted to get into a competitive spiral of disadvantage. It was just the feeling that where do we stand in all this? Suppose in relative terms, they get so much for so little. They get all this experience. They get people who are well used to how companies or industries or sectors operate. And they can bring in that expertise really without having to develop it. It's there, it's off the shelf. Um, and the fact that people struggle so much to find ways in where do SMEs advertise was a question asked repeatedly. Not that SMEs are in and of themselves the sole solutions, but I think what there is a problem with is squaring this notion that we're told all the time that the workforce is short of people, that we can't get people to do this, we can't get people to do that, and yet you have this very able, skilled, experienced cohort of people who are simply left on the margins, looking inwards. And that is a very difficult thing, I think, psychologically to square up, not to mention society to square up. I think first and foremost, it is shared experience. I think people find that very useful. And going back to the point about isolation, the feeling that you are not alone is very important. The feeling that you're able to articulate some of the problems you've come across and find that there's fellow feeling around it is helpful and useful. But outside that catharsis, I think everything from here on in has to be solutions based, whether that's establishment of networks in the effective way that women have gone about it, whether it's building an easily accessible pool of talent that employers can dip in and dip out of with some sense that what they're getting is actually really very high quality. Um, Also, I think there's an element to it of helping people understand flexibility. Defiance is a marvelous thing, and in certain circumstances is exactly the right response. But it's got to be moderated with the practicalities of our times, and also, I think moderated, if only to help soothe what is obviously quite painful. There is liberation to be found in being something slightly different, or stepping back to go forward, and helping people understand that, I think, would be a useful thing.